This is TWiT.
Well, because when we talk about Apple, we usually talk about the walled garden, and I'm really, really sorry to say this, but I am starting to see some very large bushes being put up around the Play Store.
Like junipers, the really tall ones that will light up if lit on fire.
Oh, that's a terrible analogy to put in California right now, Jason.
That's why we got rid
of
of our junipers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. That's all we got on the mind right now. It's that time of year. But okay, what we've also got on our minds is the fact that in August, there's going to be some app publishing changes for app developers that are submitting new apps to the Play Store. So developers will be required to publish Android app bundles instead of the usual APK files. These bundles are going to be in the .aab file format. That's the new Android app package, essentially. And this, again, will only apply to new apps that are submitted to the Play Store beginning in August, though Google wrote a little blog post just to kind of remind developers that it's time to start developing towards those app bundles. Google actually assembles the files in the cloud for those app bundles. And this is essentially what gives Google the keys to distribute that app, right? So they have all the little pieces. They can put it together in a nice puzzle, or rather, it's like when you hire a company to come put together furniture at your house, maybe, possibly. Except this furniture can only be put together with screwdrivers in Google's kit.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's how you think about that. So Google calls this process Google Play app signing. Kind of, same idea when you're trying to do something encrypted in a safe way, right? Devs, they can still download the signed distribution APKs from the Google Play Developer Console if they want to put their apps in other Android app stores. And when we talk about those, of course, we're talking about the direct rival, I guess you could say, which would be the Amazon App Store. Now, Android app bundles, they're not new. They actually debuted in Android 9, and part of that move was to try to get app developers to make smaller apps so that it would not be so complicated to install on low memory or budget phones. And, not for nothing, these app bundles actually cut about 15% on the app size, which is going to be helpful too for Google because they're trying to cut some of their costs on bandwidth. And when you're serving petabytes of data every time somebody's installing or pinging for the app, that's going to add up on Google's end. But the other unfortunate flip side of all of this is that it creates a sort of proprietary nature to these app bundles. Think of them as zip files that could only be, an archived file that could only be unbundled with a special key, and Google's the one that holds that key. Basically means that outside of the Play Store, you have to find a different way of distributing the app. Again, the idea is supposed to be simplify these apps for the Play Store because they won't have all the bloat of language packs and localization data that is dependent on your location and all that. So it should make for lighter apps all around. But again, it's going to make it a little harder for those third-party stores. Now, I'm wondering from you, Jason and Matteo, and for those who are watching us live and chiming in the chat, do you all feel like this is a buttoning down of the Play Store? I am personally just kind of sniffing around this. When we get to the hardware section, we'll talk about tablet that I looked at that doesn't have the Play Store. And I ran into a lot of issues because of this app bundle requirement. A lot of the really big app publishers already use it. So Spotify, for instance, is one of them that uses it, again, because they want to cut down on the app bundle so they don't have to have all those localized files for all the regions they're in. And I couldn't get it installed on the Huawei MatePad. I guess I just gave it away.
That's
so,
okay.
I'm wondering
it's a tease.
What you guys think.
Tease forward. Well, yes, I'm curious to know what how you feel about this, Matteo. Just real quick, I should mention APK Mirror has been around for quite a while. It's the APK kind of marketplace is the wrong word, but basically it's done by the folks at Android Police, where they basically have like a stockpile and reference previous versions of apps and their APK files. They, not too long ago, began to support app bundles through an app that that I think is called the APK Mirror installer for Android, and it's smart enough to kind of put these together as well. So the Play Store is not the definitive only place, but if you want your app to be distributed in the most popular place that Android apps are distributed, it has to be the Play Store, and that has to be an app bundle. And
depends on the device.
Oh, yeah.
Depends on the
device.
No
question. That depends on the device, depends on the locality and everything.
Because I tried it. We'll talk about it when we talk about the tablet, but I tried it with APK Mirror and it failed every time.
And it still didn't work. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because
we'll
they might be totally different. The APKM files that APK Mirror uses to do this is different, I'm guessing, from the AAB files that Google is requiring app developers. That's just a guess as far as one of the reasons why. But anyways, yeah, it does feel more restrictive, though I understand why Google believes this to be a great idea. And it's obviously a huge savings for Google if they can cut down on serving all of this unnecessary stuff. It's more focused per device, so on a user level, it's probably a good thing. It's just it's another one of those motions where you're kind of limiting the openness, which is again what a lot of people have come to love about Android. Matteo, where do you fall on this? Like, what are your thoughts?
As someone who has had a few insights into how apps get built and how they get distributed, I think this is really, really interesting, and I actually support this. The reason for that is that the Android development landscape has been a little sort of too free in many cases. You find a lot of developers who tend to reinvent the wheel rather than using the tooling and the frameworks that Google provide as part of the Android operating system. And this has been going on since essentially the launch of Lollipop, as far as I'm aware, is Google has been telling developers, guys, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Android and the framework of the operating system have a lot of what you need. Just let us do it for you. You just tell us what you want and we'll do it. And so essentially what these app bundles allow Google to do is they will not only target the individual device and the sort of conditions those devices are in, they'll also say, well, actually, if we're sending an older Android device, say with Android 9 or Android 10, the bundle will include everything that is needed that's not already in Android 11 and so forth. So this is going to be an incentive for not only the developers and Google to save in terms of bandwidth and resources, but it's also going to be a really good driver for the manufacturers to make sure that they have the latest version of Android on their devices, because the overall experience for the user will be easier, but not just for the user, for their own development. Because if we think about it as the launchers and all the system apps that manufacturers have on their devices, they're applications as well. So it's going to make the whole ecosystem for developers, Google, the phone device manufacturers, and the users better in the long run. It is a bit of a hard approach to it, but I think Google's at the point where they can do it now, and they don't have too much of a long-term risk in this move.
That's true. Plus, like I mentioned, a lot of those big name apps, they've already gone through with the change because of what was going on in Android 9, how they started to push apps towards it. So this is going to be more of an issue for indie devs who come through newly into the Play Store. I forget when. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think there's also a consideration. Do you remember Google launched it a couple of years ago now, instant apps, the ones that you could use from Google? So this will use the same sort of broken down concept of the app. You build it with modules and features in mind, and that way only the ones that actually need to be used are used. So the overall framework should be enabling both the app bundles and the instant app side of things.
I was noticing in one of the chat rooms someone asking, are they gonna remove the unknown sources, prompt from Android because you can't sideload APKs anymore? And I should reiterate, like this isn't necessary. This doesn't mean that Android suddenly doesn't support APKs. It also doesn't mean that developers can't export APKs. Developers can, from my understanding. Flo, you mentioned it. There is a way in the console to export an APK, and they would still need to do that because there are other app stores that support APKs. I don't think Google is necessarily saying, going forward, APKs are completely done. We're removing them from Android. It's only this new thing. And I don't think that's what Google is saying here. I think what they're saying is, if you're getting your app through the Play Store and it's a new app, this doesn't apply immediately to older apps. So if it's a new app and you want to distribute it through the Play Store, it has to support the app bundles. And of course, yes, that puts the keys into Google's hands. But that developer can still, to my understanding, export an APK, offer it for free on their site if they choose, offer it through any of the third-party app stores, and any user can still choose to install those APKs. It's just they're not going to be able to easily install the app bundles from the Play Store. That's going to require Google on the cloud side to kind of assemble these things and have more of an interaction. Which, yes, gives Google more control. That might actually give Google more control of the kind that is better for, more secure for the user. I mean, it really does give them a deeper involvement in the safety and security of the App Store. But it's different. But it's different than what we're used to. It's different from this open, you've just got an APK and it's easy to pull it out from an app that you download and it's going to work on everything. It's just more customized, and because of that, things get more complicated. And so some people are just going to not like it because of that. And I can kind of understand that, but.
Yeah, and it puts a damper on those Windows 11 plans.
Well, that's a good point.
At least when it comes to just the open nature of side loading an APK, you're going to have to find a developer who wants to take that extra effort to make sure that you can get their app. And maybe it is an incentive for developers to start thinking about it in that manner. If you were going to just submit your app to both Amazon and Google at the same time, now you're going to have to do a little bit of extra work. But
yeah. I wonder how developers, feel about that. Is that just...
Yeah, how do they feel, Matteo, since you're here speaking for every developer in the world right now?
Yeah.
No pressure.
No pressure.
As developer opinionists global, I can definitely say that this is an extra step for most developers. I mean, when you're distributing an app globally, if you're, say, a large organization, you probably have a team of people making different builds for different app stores. Because let's not forget that the phone manufacturers, Samsung and others, have their own app stores. In many countries, both in Africa and Asia, each mobile phone network operator tends to have their own app store. And consumers often trust those app stores over Google themselves. And so it's going to be tough in the short run. I wouldn't be surprised to see some brokerage services popping up saying, give us one build of your app and we'll distribute it in all the app stores.
Yeah. Totally. I could see that too. Surprised if we don't see that very soon.
Does that create more fragmentation?
It potentially can, yes, because you will have some apps that will have different release cycles for your app. They may go through different validations on how they behave on the network or in that particular market. So it can cause some app fragmentation to the point where a consumer of an app, a user of an app in the US will see completely different behavior from a user in, say, Indonesia, because they have different app versions and the overall localization and network limitations might be put in place. But it's not too different from what we already have.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, I think it's good we have you on today, Matteo, because we're going to be talking a lot more about these forks
Yes.
And yeah, lots of some changes coming.
Some changes are afoot.
Changes happening.
The local Circle K.